Alexander Isak breaks his silence in what could be a final attempt to force a move out of Newcastle, accusing the club of breaking promises over his future. What a twist. Welcome to Good Morning Transfers. Newcastle stand firm and issue an emphatic response to Isak's claims. We'll bring you both sides of the story in just a moment. Also this hour, Alejandro Garnacho turns down a move to Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich, with his heart set on one club. Abera Eze is still a Crystal Palace player. Will Tottenham get their man before the window closes? And a familiar face to the Premier League could soon be returning. Will we see Douglas Luiz in a Nottingham Forest shirt very soon? A very good morning to you at home and to former Newcastle midfielder Dan Gosling and our reporter Michael Bridge. Well, there is only one place to start. Alexander Isak has gone public for the very first time about his discontent at Newcastle, saying the relationship can't continue, and has accused the club of broken promises over his future. This is what he's had to say. I've kept quiet for a long time while others have spoken. That silence has allowed people to push their own version of events, even though they know it doesn't reflect what was really said and agreed behind closed doors. The reality is that promises were made and the club has known my position for a long time. He goes on to say, to now act as if these issues are only emerging is misleading. When promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship cannot continue. That's where things are for me right now, and why change is in the best interest of everyone, not just myself. Well, let's find out what former Newcastle midfielder Dan Gosling makes of it all then. I mean, Dan, surprised when Alexander Isak came out with that statement on social media?
No, not now. I think he has been quiet for a while, and the noise has been in the background. Obviously, his representatives have been doing a lot of talking and stuff. But now there's probably panic stations. There's 2 weeks left. He obviously wants his dream move to Liverpool. But the fact of the matter is, he has 3 years left. If Liverpool don't want to stump up the money, which is 130, 140, 150, then he's not going anywhere. Also, Newcastle have to get a replacement. And if that's not the case, then they just can't sanction a sale.
Does this come from Alexander Isak himself?
I think this one has. I think his representatives have been onto him and telling him now that you've probably got to come out and say something and address the situation. So yeah, like I say, 2 weeks to go. It's panic stations now, and he obviously wants to get out, but I'm just not sure it's going to materialise.
Yeah, well, as I said just a second ago, well, Newcastle have issued an emphatic response to Alexander Isak's statement. This is what the club have had to say. We are disappointed to have been alerted to a social media post by Alexander Isak this evening. We are clear in response that Alex remains under contract and that no commitment has ever been made by a club official that Alex can leave Newcastle United this summer. They go on to say, we want to keep our best players, but we also understand players have their own wishes and we listen to their views. As explained to Alex and his representatives, we must always take into consideration the best interests of Newcastle United, the team and our supporters in all decisions. And we have been clear that the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired. We do not foresee these conditions being met. This is a proud football club with proud traditions, and we strive to retain our family feel. Alex remains part of our family and will be welcomed back when he is ready to join his teammates. I mean, I suppose the next question then is, Dan, what happens next? Because by that statement, it looks like Newcastle are ready to welcome him back. But from his statement, it looks like he's not ready to come back.
Yeah, I think Newcastle, Eddie, the players, the fans, maybe not at this point, but in time, they will welcome him back. If he comes back 2-3 weeks' time, once the window's shut and he starts scoring, all the fans are going to be happy again. They're going to forget this little saga that's been going on. And he'll do well for the club, and in the summer next year they'll review it and probably have to sell him with 2 years left on his contract. Newcastle are in a strong position. I think the agreement was if they could sign a replacement, they tried. João Pedro, Delap, Sesko, they've tried. Ekitike, they've tried, and they would have sanctioned a sale no problem. But as it's transpired, they just haven't managed to get that top-class replacement in.
And that's clear with the statement. We have been clear that the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired. We do not foresee those conditions being met. That's the key here. So, a very, very interesting next couple of weeks. He's, with this statement, but he's further away than ever.
Yeah, it must be very frustrating for him. I can totally understand it. But from a club's point of view, they're in a strong position. And like I say, if Liverpool aren't going to pay the money, if they're not going to get a replacement in, what can they do?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Right, let's head to Newcastle now and speak live to our reporter, Keith Downey. He is at the club's training ground. Morning, Keith. I mean, Isak's broken his silence. Newcastle, though, adamant he wasn't told he could leave. I mean, it feels like now things have reached boiling point.
Yeah, it feels as though a line in the sand was drawn last night between both Alexander Isak and Newcastle. The silence from both clubs now for a while, a number of weeks, has been deafening, and it's been left to Eddie Howe to sit there and front up and answer the questions when he's not in charge of everything that's happening. Look, it's a real sorry situation that it's come to this. You've got to remember Alexander Isak, just 4 months ago, was the player who scored the winning goal for Newcastle in the cup final that brought home their first trophy in 70 years. Everywhere you go in Newcastle, there's young kids with 14 Isak on the back of their shirts, you know, fans with Isak tattoos on their body after scoring the winner in the final, and we're in this situation. But look, clearly from his statement last night, he feels promises have been reneged on. I think that promise that he's alluding to, and although he doesn't say it in his statement, I think that promise was a new contract on higher wages, which of course hasn't arrived. And he's gone through last season, scored 27 goals, still on the same contract. Now, I had just heard you guys chatting before I came on air, and 100% you're right. Newcastle are in a strong position. Isak does have 3 years left on that existing 6-year contract that he signed, so they're in a position of strength. And essentially that was what I think they were trying to say in their statement last night, but they need him as well. And look, this is a situation where Newcastle have tried this summer to try and find a replacement to allow him to leave. Remember, he said a number of weeks ago, or he didn't say, but the message from his camp was that he was wishing to explore a move away from the club. That amidst the interest from Liverpool, of course, then a week later came the offer from Liverpool, £110 million plus add-ons, that was turned down by Newcastle United. So Newcastle have tried to facilitate it. They tried to sign Hugo Ekitike, who would have been a like-for-like replacement. They tried to sign Benjamin Sesko, who would have been a like-for-like replacement, and they've got right down to the nitty-gritty in both those deals and lost out, ironically, to Liverpool and then to Manchester United. So look, Newcastle feel that they have tried, but just from the tone, the wording of their statement last night that dropped round about, I think it was just after 11:30 last night, it feels very much like a resignation that they're unable to, or have been unable to, get a replacement in with just under 2 weeks of the window left. And it feels very much like, look, they're digging their heels in, and Alexander Isak will remain a Newcastle United player beyond the end of the transfer window. What will be really interesting will be if and when Isak returns to the pitch wearing black and white stripes.
Keith, the door's been left open by Newcastle for him to return in their statement, but in his it feels like he now just absolutely wants to leave. I know you said if he does come back, and will he be in black and white, but what has to happen now in order for any deal to take place?
Yeah, well, you know, Newcastle talked last night about the sort of conditions of a sale, and I've been saying this all summer long. There were two conditions. One, the valuation of the player is £150 million. Look, that is what Newcastle's valuation is. I still think they would probably do a deal for a little bit less than that, but I think Liverpool's £110 million offer that landed a few weeks ago is way short. So if Liverpool were to really seriously want Isak, they would have to come to the table with a higher bid. And the second is that Newcastle need to find a replacement. As I touched on a moment ago, they tried on Sesko, they tried on Ekitike, failed on both of those. They're actually even struggling right now, as we can see, to bring in a replacement for Callum Wilson, who left on freedom of contract. You know, we've been telling you for weeks now that they've been trying to sign Yoane Wissa from Brentford. He's seen as the Callum Wilson replacement rather than the Alexander Isak replacement, so they can't even get the second striker in, if you like. Now, I think if they were able to land Wissa in the next few days, and you know, I am expecting Newcastle to go into Brentford with a higher bid in the next couple of days on Wissa. If they were to land Wissa, and Liverpool came to the table and offered, you know, 130, 135 million pounds, would be my reading into the situation, then I think Newcastle might have a little decision to make. If they're unable to bring in Wissa, then Isak will not be going anywhere, and that was essentially what they were saying in their statement last night. If they were able to find a gem from somewhere with less than 2 weeks of the window to go, bring that player in and bring in Wissa, and Liverpool came to the table with a significantly higher bid, then I think Alexander Isak would be allowed to go. I think there's been a lot of people saying throughout this summer that Isak is not for sale. He's not for sale in that Newcastle don't want to lose him, but they were aware that he was unhappy. They're aware he was agitating to leave. They have tried to facilitate that. But the options for them in this window for a striker have been few and far between. And the two big name strikers they have gone for, Ekitike and Sesko, they have lost out on at the bitter end of tense negotiations. So, look, it feels very much like Newcastle have been angered by what Isak said on his social media last night, and that they will dig their heels in. I think the only way that Isak could go between now and the end of the transfer window is if they either A, manage to get two strikers in, which is going to prove really, really difficult, and Liverpool up their offer significantly, or B, they manage to bring in Wissa and Liverpool up their offer significantly. I think there's a small chance of that happening. That will leave Newcastle with a decision to make. However, it would leave them very light on striker reinforcements, with only Wissa and Anthony Gordon, who of course is better on the left but has started the season through the middle. So look, it's going to be a very tense last couple of weeks. It feels like a line in the sand was drawn from both parties last night, and I have to say this situation has become a little bit toxic here at St James's Park.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting to see how this one ends. Thank you very much, Keith.
Yeah, do you know what? I find this so interesting because I always like listening to Eddie Howe. I find him one of the most engaging managers in the Premier League. But I could hear anger in his voice last week, and he's going to be angry, isn't he, Dan? I mean, how is he going to deal with this? Because we keep talking about the Premier League, the Champions League. It's going to be a relentless fixture list for him next season.
I don't know how he's going to deal with it. He will be angry because obviously he was the one that brought Isak in. They paid huge money for him at the time, who was sort of relatively unknown. His goal scoring record was good. He come in, he had injury issues as well for the first year, so the club stood by him. And then the club have essentially made him who he is. I know Isak's put in the performances, put in the work. But without Newcastle, Isak wouldn't be getting all this talk to Liverpool, £140 million. So yeah, he'd be angry, but ultimately it's football, and every player wants to play at the very, very top. Every player wants to test themselves. Liverpool are one of the best clubs in the world at this moment in time. But if Newcastle don't sign a replacement, probably two, then he's not going anywhere.
Well, you couldn't write it, could you? Because next up for Newcastle is Liverpool at home on the Monday night football. That is going to be tasty. Coverage starts at 6:30 p.m. on Sky Sports Premier League. Right, let's get to France now. Marseille have announced that Rabio and Jonathan Rowe have been placed on the club's transfer list. The club say the decision was taken due to unacceptable behaviour in the locker room after the match at Rennes. Let's find out more on this now and speak to French football expert Jonathan Johnson, who joins us on the show. Thanks for speaking with us, Jonathan. Reports claim the pair had a fight after Marseille lost their League One opener. What do you know?
Yeah, so things came to blows after the game. Not an ideal start to the season for Marseille, losing 1-0, especially against 10 men, to a late goal. But it's never really a club that's very light on drama, Marseille, to to put it politely. They always seem to find a way to create these kind of issues for themselves, and it seems like Roberto De Zerbi doesn't have any patience with either of the players, and they'll be moved on because there's no real way of reintegrating them to the team. They've been separated from the group since that incident, and it's essentially unacceptable behaviour now that Marseille no longer want to tolerate. So they're looking to move on both before the end of the window, and it's really a disappointing start to the season for Marseille when they had hoped to maybe take advantage of the fact that PSG were not as fresh, and there was a potential way to catch them at the top of Ligue 1 and maybe whittle down the gap and put a bit of pressure on them this season. So things not off to a strong start for Marseille, but definitely a very surprising decision given the severity of the punishment for both players.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's another big story in France, and that's around the future of Gianluigi Donnarumma. Now, why did PSG sign Lucas Chevalier, and what was the thinking behind that move?
So I think this is a move that was expected quite a while ago, especially when Luis Enrique first came in. It's well known that although Gianluigi Donnarumma is a traditional shot stopper style goalkeeper, he's not the best with the ball at his feet. That's something that is really important to the way that Luis Enrique sets up his teams, and it's something that Luis Enrique has had to really sort of soldier on without for the first 2 seasons of his tenure in Paris. So it's almost a surprise that this is only coming now as opposed to much earlier in his time with PSG. Obviously PSG have performed extremely well despite Luis Enrique playing with a goalkeeper like Donnarumma, who's not quite the kind of profile that he would normally like to play with. Champions League semi-final in the first season, and obviously Champions League success in the second. But it does feel like this has been on the cards for some time, and that PSG are now looking to move him on in order to bring in a transfer fee instead of risking losing him as a free agent, because let's not forget Donnarumma himself arrived in Paris as a free agent a few years ago, despite obviously the significant outlay that PSG had on his wages and his contract.
It's clear, obviously, PSG don't want Donnarumma, as you said, but as things stand, he hasn't got any offers, which surprises me a little bit. Maybe it's because managers want, ball-playing goalkeepers, but we do know of Premier League interest. Do you see anything developing there?
It wouldn't surprise me if PSG really, tried to find, the right kind of deal in order to get him out of the door before the end of the transfer window, because, like you said, it could potentially become problematic if he's still a PSG player come the end of the transfer window. It's very clear, especially from the first couple of games of the season for PSG in the Super Cup and also the opening round of Ligue 1 games, that Chevalier will be PSG's number 1 goalkeeper moving forward. So now the onus really is on Donnarumma and his agent to come to an agreement with a club who can put an acceptable offer in front of PSG. There's definitely a deal there to be done, but obviously it's quite late in the transfer window, and that's, to be honest, I think that's something that was completely normal as well for PSG's transfer window this summer, given how long last season lasted for them with the Club World Cup involved, and a real lack of pre-season as well this season. So it's a tricky situation, very delicate, obviously, but there is expected to be strong potential for movement in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Right, there's plenty of business done at Chelsea already this summer, and there could still be plenty more to do, particularly outgoings, with up to 9 players on their way out of Stamford Bridge. One looks particularly close. We'll tell you who next. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Let's get to Chelsea now, and the focus is on sales. RB Leipzig are in talks with Chelsea over the signing of Christopher Nkunku after having previously rejected a loan move from Bayern Munich on Sunday. Chelsea value the France international at £43 million this summer. I mean, Dan, one thing Chelsea are very good at, it feels like, it is getting players out. This saga's been going on for far too long, involving someone like Christopher Nkunku, who, we saw the levels he reached before he came to Chelsea. So does this feel like inevitable now to Leipzig on a permanent deal? Yeah, obviously the player and the club both want a permanent deal. I think the loan move to Bayern didn't transpire because of the loan. But yeah, it's a strange one. He just hasn't settled. He come in with a big fee. Really good reputation from Leipzig, scored a lot of goals. He wasn't traditionally a number 9, actually. I think they moved him into that position
scored a lot of goals, got his big move to Chelsea, and then he got injured very early. And since that injury, he just hasn't come back and hasn't been able to get a run in the side at all. So I think it's now time to move on. I mean, look, the £43 million they're asking for is a hell of a lot of money. I think they're going to get it. I'm not sure, but Chelsea do what Chelsea do, and they do generate money from sales.
I hope Chelsea do get it, Dan. I hope they do. It's almost a domino effect, isn't it, Michael, that, you know, if they can get this one over the line, it then gives them the ability to bring maybe a couple more attackers in. Yeah,
look, I think we know from the last few weeks that Enzo Maresca's looking to bring a few more wide players in. Alejandro Garnacho, Xavi Simons is a quality player as well. But look, Chelsea have to adhere to the FFP rules for UEFA. They had that fine, didn't they, earlier in the summer? They've agreed to have this positive transfer balance. So, look, I'm not Gordon Gekko, but if you spend 300 million, you've got to bring 300 million in as well. But look, they do it pretty well, Chelsea. It's got to be said. I
mean, especially this summer as well, Michael. Just how well have Chelsea sold this summer?
Sometimes I look at it. I look at the two North London clubs. Sometimes I think they, you know, when they're looking to sell players, you know, they sometimes struggle in terms of the fees. But look at that, 24 players sold, £186.6 million. Now, a few years ago, under the new takeover with Chelsea, there was a bit of what's going on here. But look, as I said before, I think, you know, Enzo Maresca, OK, Conference League, they were favourites, clear favourites to win that. But Champions League qualification secured, and then out of nowhere, winning the Club World Cup. He's done all right.
Yeah, well, that's obviously generated a lot of funds, didn't it? So that paid for João Pedro, paid for Delap pretty much straight away. So that tournament was great for them. The academy system that they run there is excellent, and they sign so many players, and eventually they churn them out. And obviously, with the PSR, it's full profit, so they're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, and you can see the money that Chelsea have recouped this summer, but there are a long list, Michael, of players that Chelsea still need to sell. Yeah,
it's like an Argos catalogue. But, I mean, look, we're saying about 300 million in, 300 million out. I mean, look, Christopher Nkunku there, Nicholas Jackson being linked with a move away. Let's spin me round again. Here we go. So, I mean, these are players not considered to have a future at Chelsea. Raheem Sterling, he was the talk of last season's deadline day. Where's he going to end up? And Ben Chilwell, you know, he spent the second half of last season on loan at Crystal Palace. Look, they're going to sell. They're going to bring money in, Chelsea. They want to bring these players in, but of course, they've got to have this positive transfer balance. But I'd say positive. Everything seems to be positive so far at Chelsea.
Dan, when you look at that list of players we have just seen, as a player, you know, those players are going to want to get out there. They're not going to want to be sat at Chelsea not playing football. So for them, they're going to be desperate. But I suppose if they don't have any offers, it's going to be really tough for them. What do they do if that then doesn't happen? Yeah,
I mean, I look at Sterling's situation. He's got kids. They're in school. One's in Arsenal Academy, I know. So for him, he wants to move local. So I look at Fulham, I look at West Ham, I look at the London clubs for a loan, but then it's wages and it's... So, I mean, a few clubs abroad would probably want him, but would he actually want to go abroad at this stage of his career? He's won everything in the game. He's played at every top club. Does he feel now he needs to go and prove himself at another big club abroad? Probably not. I think with Raheem, he's got 3 years left of his deal. Quite cosy, I guess. So a loan to a London club would probably suit him the best.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with all of those players that Chelsea are looking to get out. Well, the deal for that man behind us, Christopher Nkunku, could potentially have a domino effect for Alejandro Garnacho. Yesterday, we told you that Manchester United winger turned down a move to Bayern Munich as he only wants Chelsea. I mean, Dan, turning down Bayern Munich, listen, we all know that I would love it if players, you know, want to come to Chelsea. But turning down Bayern Munich is quite something.
It's very brave, because if Chelsea doesn't materialise, then he's stuck at Manchester United. Yeah. And this Chelsea deal is not done at all. They obviously need to sell 1 or 2 before this happens. Whether they go for Simons before Garnacho as well, and then that space is blocked, I don't know. They could even do a full swing and go Eze. They could nick Eze off Spurs.
I'd like that.
I'm going to throw that one in there.
Steady on. Steady on.
I knew you wouldn't like that one. But no, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, really. Garnacho to Bayern, I mean, it's 2 big clubs. But like I said, very, very brave.
Why do you think it's just Chelsea? Why has he only got his eyes for Chelsea? And it's, I suppose, the same with Xavi Simons. You know, there's other clubs interested in him, but for some reason, those two have their hearts set on joining Chelsea.
I think it's probably the long-standing interest as well. You know, players do like living in London, let's be honest. There are plenty of I mean, you mentioned Tottenham. Christian Romero's just extended his contract. They are, you know, it's settling, it's feeling. I think sometimes we don't fully appreciate these are very young people. It doesn't matter how much you earn, it takes a lot to move away. New language, it's a lot for young lads, you know. So if he's happy, he might have his family over here. And also, it is the lure of London, but also I think that long-standing interest from Chelsea has probably attracted him as well.
I mean, Dan, obviously, from a player's perspective, obviously, when you move and you've moved around, when you do move, what things did you have to consider when moving to different clubs?
Look, I mean, unfortunately, I wasn't getting linked with Bayern and Chelsea, these types of clubs, but location definitely has a factor. I think if you're a big enough profile, big enough player, you can not pick your location, but you can bear that in mind. Obviously, children, I don't know if he has kids or he's very young. So again, schools and things like that will all come into play. But yeah, Bayern is Garnacho for me. Look, he showed glimpses of his quality at Manchester United, but he just hasn't showed it enough. It was a bit like Jadon Sancho. There's glimpses there. We know there's a player there. It's just who can get the best out of him. He obviously believes Enzo Maresca is the guy that can get the best out of him.
Will Alejandro Garnacho end up at Chelsea? We shall see. Right, it's time for a short break, but it could be a big day for Eberechi Eze's future. Just a day before a crucial Conference League qualifier. We'll assess what's next for him and his teammate Mark Gahey after this.
Coming up this morning for you at 10 o'clock, Sky Sports Fan Club, the show that puts you right at the heart of the debate. Charlie Austin is with us this morning, and guess what? We're talking Alexander Isak, Newcastle fans, Liverpool fans, whoever you support. We want to hear from you this morning. We're also going to be talking about increasing pressure on Russell Martin at Rangers and Mohamed Salah, who won his third PFA Player of the Year award. Why is he not regarded as the best Premier League player of all time? Or is he? Let us know. This is how you get in touch. If you want to send us your voice notes, leave us a message on WhatsApp. Simply scan this QR code and it'll take you straight there. Alternatively, you can use our WhatsApp number 07514 917 075, or you can get in touch using X, Instagram, Facebook. Just use the hashtag Sky Sports FC.
Thank you very much, William. Right, time now for our transfer update. Liverpool target Alexander Isak says his relationship with Newcastle can't continue and change is in the best interests of everyone, as he accused the club of broken promises over his future. Newcastle responded by refuting Isak's suggestion he was told he could leave this summer. Tottenham remain in talks with Crystal Palace over Iber Eze, but the South London club wants a replacement before considering his sale. Crystal Palace defender Mark Gahey is preparing to play in tomorrow's Conference League playoff first leg against Norwegian side Fredrikstad, with no breakthrough yet between Palace and Liverpool. Nottingham Forest are making progress in talks with Juventus over a deal for former Aston Villa midfielder Douglas Luiz. Yohan Wissa was pictured training with Brentford's first team as he waits for a move to Newcastle United to materialise. The striker this week deleted all references to Brentford from his Instagram. Jadon Sancho has decided to explore his other options after Roma made a £20 million bid for the Manchester United forward, although the Italian club have not given up hope of signing him. Chelsea will only sign Alejandro Garnacho and Xavi Simons if at least two first-team forwards leave before the window closes. Leeds United have agreed a deal with AC Milan for the permanent signing of Noah Okafor. Atalanta have moved on from Fulham's Rodrigo Muniz and agreed a deal to sign Lecce striker Nikola Kristovic, according to Sky in Italy. And Newcastle have rejected an approach from Ipswich to take Lewis Miley on loan for the season. Well, don't forget, you can keep across all the latest information as it happens on our dedicated Transfer Centre blog. All you have to do is scan the QR code, which wasn't on your screen, so you can't scan the QR code on your screen. But if it was, we hopefully will show you how to do it later. But they are all of the rumours going on in the transfer world right now. We've got a little bit of breaking news, and that is that Aston Villa have confirmed that winger Leon Bailey has joined Roma on loan. The deal includes an option to buy for around £19 million. We might get on to Aston Villa and their transfer window a little bit later on in the show. But for now, Crystal Palace have approached Leicester City to discuss a possible deal for forward Bilal El Khanous as they look for a replacement for Eberechi Eze, who is nearing a move to Tottenham. Now, we have been told the deal, it could be worth in the region of £30 million plus add-ons for the Leicester forward. So that's obviously what they're trying to do to replace Eze. But for me, Dan, and I suppose for you as well, that man there, Eberechi Eze, I mean, I watched him play against Chelsea on Sunday and he was absolutely brilliant. Could this be the signing of the summer?
Yes. Ultimately, look, the last couple of years, Eze has really come to the fore with club and country. I think when he's come for England, he's done really, really well. I think this move will definitely put him in that England squad for the World Cup. I think he could probably start for England at the World Cup. As soon as James Maddison got injured, I suspected that they would look for that position. They obviously tried with Morgan Gibbs-White, didn't manage to get him. I think Eze could be a better business than that.
I mean, for £60 million as well, I feel like in this market, for a player like that, I think it's an absolute steal.
Yeah, I think it's going to suit both clubs, Liv, because Crystal Palace aren't in the position to let players run down their contracts. I think Steve Parish, who I always enjoy listening to, speaking to, very open the other week in the mix zone after they won the Community Shield about Mark Gay's future and Eberechi Eze. He's got 2 years left on his deal. And let's have a contrast here. Eze has got such a wonderful relationship with the Crystal Palace fans. I saw tweet after tweet yesterday. He goes with our best wishes. He gave us one of the best days of our lives, winning the FA Cup, scoring in the FA Cup final. And people wonder, like, why did he play against Chelsea on Sunday? Because he gets on with Oliver Glasner. He has a great relationship with Oliver Glasner, great relationship with the fans, great relationship with Steve Parish. So I do feel, though, this is a very pivotal day in this, I hate the word saga, but in this transfer situation between Daniel Levy and Steve Parish. And, of course, they've got the Conference League qualifier tomorrow. We are at Crystal Palace's training ground. Gary Cotter is later this morning, so stay with us on Sky Sports News.
You a little bit nervous, Michael, or...?
No, I think Palace will win that game.
Michael, do you think, obviously, they're looking to bring in El Khanous from Leicester? I mean, Eze's so difficult to replace. I mean, I suppose be half the price, so it's then like, will they be looking to get another player on top? Because, I mean, how do you replace that man?
I think so, because I think Oliver Glasner, again, he's very open. He's ultra ambitious, even after winning the Community... This is Palace we're talking about. Wins the FA Cup, wins the Community Shield, and he's so relaxed. He's like, yeah, right, let's go again. Whereas... You know, this is Palace. You know, winning the Community Shield, it's an incredible period for the football club. But he wants more now. We know it's been disappointment over not being in the Europa League. Go and win that competition now. Yeah. Just go and win it. Embrace it. Glasner won it with Frankfurt, won the Europa League with Frankfurt. We know he's got that capability. But he wants to bring players in. It's not a like-for-like replacement. I think that'd be a bit unfair on El Khanous. Yeah. He came off at half-time against Preston. Not the finished article, but clear talent there.
Yeah, I wonder if El Khanous will be on his way to Crystal Palace. I suppose it all depends on whether that man, Eberechi Eze, will be on his way to Spurs. Meanwhile, Palace are interested in Hwang Hee-chan from Wolves. Wolves wouldn't be prepared to let the 29-year-old leave on loan, though. But I suppose, Dan, with Eddie Nketiah out injured... obviously, JP Mateta's brilliant and he is their number one striker. But obviously, playing in the Conference League this season, surely they do need a backup in that position.
Oh, 100%. And Chan, to be fair, is a great player. And he'll come in and he won't kick up a fuss if he's not going to play. I think that he'll be told Mateta's the number one. You will play a lot of games. And he will, because you can't play the same team as Thursday, Sundays, I think, the conference. So you can't play the same team or the travelling. He'll get a lot of games. He can also play in the 2-10 positions, which Palace like to play. So if they're going to lose Eze, he can easily slot in there and actually start a lot of games as well. So it'd be a good signing.
Yeah, the other potential exit at Palace could be Mark Gay, but as of yet, there's no breakthrough in discussions between Liverpool and Crystal Palace over a transfer fee. Palace value him at more than £40 million, but Liverpool do not want to overpay for a player who, of course, is into the final year of his deal. But I suppose, Dan, as a player, Mark Gay were feeling pretty calm about this situation. I suppose it's a win-win either way, you know, if he stays or if he goes.
Yes, but look, I think I think he'll be on the plane to England for the World Cup, for England at the World Cup. I think at Palace he's going to play every week. If he goes to Liverpool, I think he still goes, but he's not going to start as many games. I think Konate, I know he had a tough time the opening league game of the season, and it's probably created a little bit more noise, and Liverpool might want to do a bit of business, but for £40 million, it's quite a lot for 1 year left on his contract, who's probably not going to come in and be that first choice starter. Terrific player. I think the way he's handled himself has been fantastic. Him and Eze. I think that's why Palace would let them go for a reasonable price. They've been great. But yeah, £40 million, I just don't know when in 12 months' time you can get him for free.
I mean, let's get it right as well, Michael. There's no way that Mark Guéhi is going to force through a move here, and he is more than happy to stay at Palace this season.
Absolutely. And look, a year ago we were on the transfer show talking about Newcastle in and ready to pay around £70 million for Mark Guéhi. Now people can turn around and say, "Oh, Palace should have taken it." Really? They had one of the best days of their lives winning the FA Cup. But one thing we do know, they do not want him to see his contract out and go for free.
Yeah, absolutely. A sort of a tricky situation for Crystal Palace. We'll wait to see what happens with both Eze and Guéhi. Right, we have some more breaking news, and that is that Porto are in talks with Arsenal over the signing of defender Jakub Kiwior. The proposed deal is a loan with an obligation to buy. We understand the total package under discussion is worth more than 23 million, including the loan fee. Just a reminder of that deal then for Aston Villa. Leon Bailey is off to Roma on loan. We'll be talking a little bit more about Aston Villa next. Welcome back. Tim Vickery said he was flabbergasted by this deal yesterday, but here it is, exclusive pictures of Manchester City teenager Claudio Echeverri arriving in Dusseldorf last night. Ahead of finalising his loan move to Bayer Leverkusen, he's expected to undergo a medical and complete the formalities of the deal. Right, let's talk Nottingham Forest now. They're making progress in talks with Juventus over a deal for Douglas Luiz. The former Aston Villa midfielder is available for transfer after struggling to settle in Turin since joining a year ago. I mean, Dan, you've played against Douglas Luiz back in the 1920 season. How tough was he to come up against in the centre of midfield?
I think he's still in here somewhere. No, Douglas Luiz, he is a fantastic player. Brazilian international, great technique, and he's got a tackle in him as well. And he suits the Premier League. He'll suit Nottingham Forest. They don't play with the ball all the time, so his out of possession stuff will be really key. I think he'll just suit the way they play on the counter-attack. He'll break things up and then he'll pass to Gibbs-White, McAtee, Hutchison, all the new boys that they've got in, and they'll cause teams a lot of problems with him. Yeah,
he had a bit of a torrid time over in Italy, Michael, and, you know, if they do sign him, does he come in straight away? And I can't imagine him replacing Elliot Anderson in midfield. So does that mean maybe Sangare gets replaced?
Possibly, but I go back to it now. Forest are in the Europa League. It's going to be Thursday, Sunday, and that's what Forest are going to have to juggle. Now, I think Forest is still going to have an excellent season, but clubs like Palace and Forest, they're going to have to get used to this. It's not easy.
It's so tough.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Nuno was quite critical last week of the lack of signings. Then, boom, four come in the next 24 hours. They look really strong. You mentioned Elliot Anderson. I think he's going to be one of the players of the season in the Premier League. He's a phenomenal player. But you talk about Douglas Luiz, he was heavily linked with Arsenal a few years ago. Sometimes it just doesn't work out in a city, in a new country. We know he can play in the Premier League. It would be an absolutely brilliant signing for Nottingham Forest. Yeah,
it would be. And Elliot Anderson's in my FPL team, so I was loving that first game. Dan, just talking of Nottingham Forest window as a whole then, you know, there are a couple of other clubs, like, you know, Liverpool have had a really good window, maybe City as well. But where do you think that Forest window ranks in terms of the best this summer?
Yeah, I think after last season, everyone wanted Forest to kick on. And it took them a little while, this window, to get going. I think now, the last week, obviously getting the McAtee over the line, Hutchison over the line, and Doy come on. I think he scored on the weekend, and he had a fantastic start to the season. So now everyone is going to be sort of buoyed by Forest, and they're going to be on the up again. Chris Wood's scoring already. I think it's a top window now. If they can get this one over the line, I think it's a really fantastic window, and they could be challenging again for those top 6 places.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what Forest do being in the Europa League as well. Now to this team, Bournemouth by Leverkusen have agreed a £25 million deal for attacking midfielder Amin Adli. I mean, another signing, Dan, for Bournemouth, and he is someone that can play anywhere across the front sort of 3 or 4 positions, so versatility perfect for Andoni Iraola.
Yeah, left, right, number 10 is how they play. He's quick, very technical. He'll find spaces in the pockets, but he can also go in behind. And I think he's perfect for Andoni and his style of play. He'll fit in seamlessly, and another probably fantastic acquisition, really. Great attacking player, really versatile, and he's going to have a big part to play this year.
Yeah, and Bournemouth's business, Dan, as a whole, you know, Diakite, Petrovic, to name just a couple. They've backed Andoni Iraola, haven't they? Spent over 100 million. Is it a good summer for them?
No, I wouldn't say it's a good summer losing the players that they have, but to replace them, I think Truffert come in on the weekend at Liverpool, fantastic debut. Diakite, he come in, obviously, look, you're not going to replace Dean Huijsen. Zabani, 2 fantastic centre-halves, like for like, but he's proved that he can come in and play. Solid debut, although they conceded 4 goals. He still played really well. I think, look, it's a transitional year, or definitely start anyway. But no, I think Ben Doak coming in now, another young player, it's a typical Bournemouth signing, a young one who's going to come in. He needs a bit of work probably, but over the year he'll get better and better and better. And it's been okay, but they've lost 3 or 4 really top-class players.
Yeah, Michael, I suppose it's tough when you lose pretty much your whole defence, including your keeper as well. And key was keeping hold of players like Antoine Semenyo.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there by mentioning Semenyo. I was going to say, I was watching him on Friday night. You know, he was linked with moves away. You know, I know Spurs liked him sort of very early June. So sometimes keeping your best players, sometimes the best signing you can make. And I think Semenyo's a key example there.
100%. Everyone saw what he did on Friday night. His pace and his power is just... It's incredible, and I'm surprised not many teams didn't go in for him, to be honest. I know the price tag was high, but when you've got an attacking player that can score, that can track back, can take the ball, handle the ball in any area really, then 65, 70 million is not a bad price.
I mean, so how long do you reckon they can keep hold of someone like Antoine Semenyo?
Well, look, they've tied him down to a new contract, so he's not going anywhere. Certainly not this window, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, there's less than 2 weeks to go then in the window. So for the final part of the show, we're just going to focus on who still needs to do what in this summer transfer window. So, Dan, I'm going to start with you and your former club, Everton. After the disappointing result against Leeds on the opening day, what do you feel like they need? Because although it was a contentious penalty decision, Leeds were far the better side.
Yeah, I think Leeds at home started the Premier League season a bit like Sunderland. The fans are up. It was always going to be tough for Everton. They made one slight error and got punished for it. Although they weren't in the game, they could have come out there with a draw. That would have been a typical Everton side, really, and it would have been a great start. But they probably needed 1 or 2 more attacking players. I don't know how long Jared Brantwaite's out for, so potentially they might need a defensive reinforcement, but they definitely need 1 or 2. I mean, again, Douglas Luiz would probably be perfect for them as well. But it depends what they can spend and who's available.
Yeah, absolutely. What about Villa then, Michael? Because we know there are constraints there massively. Bought in a couple of players, but is it enough with them competing in Europe again this season?
Probably not at the moment. Obviously, Sonny Van Guisan, but obviously Asensio didn't stay, Rashford didn't stay. I think missing out on that Champions League was really key. Now, we'll be speaking to Kieran Maguire at 12 o'clock talking about finances, and we mentioned PSO. We probably mentioned PSO of Aston Villa more than any football club. But it was the first time I'd ever seen Unai Emery get really frustrated in post-match interviews. I've never seen Unai Emery like that. So they'll be looking to do some more business. I know they're absolutely heartbroken losing Jacob Ramsey as well, but I do expect Villa to do a bit of business over the next few weeks.
I suppose this is sad as well, the whole point about PSR, Dan, and losing your academy players. It feels like that's the only way you can get, sort of, be in the PSR rules is by selling those players. Yeah,
it's unfortunate. Newcastle obviously had to sell Anderson, who's going to be a really, really good player, and he started the season great. Was last year at Forest, was one of their better players, so he would probably be arguably playing for Newcastle right now. They've had to then prey on the weak, which is Aston Villa right now, and they've nicked Ramsey. So it swings and roundabouts, I guess, but yeah, it's unfortunate, and those rules need to be changed.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Aston Villa do in this transfer window? Right, Good Morning Transfers returns tomorrow at 9 a.m. We're back for Transfer Talk at midday. European football expert Julien Laurent will be with us, and the Transfer Show returns at 4 and 7 p.m. tomorrow. Coming up next, it's Sky Sports Fan Club, and it's Charlie Austin joining Will Perry.